Admiral Vix of the Stellar Alliance stood motionless before the grand observation window of the flagship Dawn's Light, his 4 eyes fixed on the shimmering barrier that had claimed so many lives. The quantum defense grid of the Nexari stretched across the Helios 9 system like an intricate web of light, each strand pulsing with enough energy to vaporize a cruiser. 3 years of tactical brilliance, technological superiority, and unwavering determination had amounted to nothing. The combined fleet of the 7 most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy had failed to make even the slightest dent in the Nexari's defenses. Their enemies didn't even bother to counterattack anymore. They simply waited behind their impenetrable wall, watching as the Alliance exhausted itself against their defenses. "Another squadron lost," Admiral reported First Strategist Keela, her holographic form materializing beside him. Her crystalline body, typical of the Lumini species, reflected the distant stars. The 7th Expeditionary Force attempted a quantum tunneling maneuver. The Nexari grid adapted within microseconds. Vix's upper appendages twitched in frustration. The 7th Expeditionary had been among their finest, ships capable of phase shifting through solid matter, crews trained in 11-dimensional combat tactics. Yet they had vanished like all the others, their advanced technology rendered useless against the Nexari's superior defensive algorithms. "How many ships remain in the sector?" Vix asked, though he already knew the answer. He had memorized every vessel, every crew member, every failed attempt to breach that cursed barrier. 832 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels. Kayla responded. Her voice carried the mathematical precision of her species. "At our current rate of attrition, we will exhaust our combat-capable fleet in approximately 73 standard days." The observation deck fell silent save for the subtle hum of the ship's quantum core. Beyond the window, the barrier rippled with casual indifference to their presence. The Helios 9 system lay just beyond, its resources and strategic position making it too valuable to abandon. Yet each passing day proved the futility of their efforts. "The Council of 7 has called an emergency session," Killa continued after a moment. "They're considering a full withdrawal from the sector." Vix's secondary hearts clenched at the thought. Withdrawal meant more than defeat. It meant surrendering an entire arm of the galaxy to the Nexari. Dozens of developing civilizations would fall under their influence. The balance of power would shift irreversibly. "Show me the latest analysis of their defense patterns," he commanded. A 3-dimensional tactical display materialized in the air before him, showing the intricate dance of energy and matter that had claimed so many lives. The Nexari grid moved with perfect mathematical precision, adapting to every attack with cold efficiency. "We've run 10 million simulations," Killa reported. "Every possible approach has been calculated, every variable considered, every technology in our arsenal tested. The Nexari's predictive algorithms are simply too advanced. They anticipate and counter our strategies before we can even fully execute them." Vix was about to respond when a new alert flashed across the tactical display. An unidentified vessel had just emerged from deep space at the edge of the system. The ship's design was unfamiliar, crude by Alliance standards, with visible hull plating and what appeared to be chemical thrusters alongside more advanced propulsion systems. "Classification?" Vix asked, his attention caught by the strange newcomer. "Unknown species," Kayla replied, her crystalline form shifting with interest. "Their technology appears to be a hybrid of primitive and modern designs. They're broadcasting an identification signal." Translating now. The message appeared in the air between them, simple text in a language none of their translation matrices had encountered before. But it was the name of the vessel that caught Vix's attention, stirring something deep in his strategic mind. "Earth Exploratory Vessel, Curiosity's Child, requests identification and status of local space." Neither Vix nor Keela could have known it then, but this moment would later be marked in Alliance histories as the turning point of the war, the instant when everything changed. For in the arrival of this single ship from an unknown world called Earth, The impossible became possible, and the path to victory would emerge from the most unexpected direction imaginable. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Curiosity's Child, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the spectacular light show before her. The view through the reinforced observation windows defied everything humanity thought they knew about space warfare. Energy beams of impossible colors traced geometric patterns across the void, while ships of breathtaking design performed maneuvers that seemed to bend reality itself. "Sensors are having trouble processing what we're seeing," reported Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez from his station. "The energy readings are off the charts, and some of these particles, they shouldn't even exist in our universe." Sarah nodded, but her attention was fixed on something else entirely. While her crew marveled at the advanced technology on display, she found herself drawn to the underlying patterns of movement. There was something familiar about it, something that tugged at memories from her childhood in San Francisco. "Enhance the tactical display," she commanded. "Focus on the defensive barrier's response patterns." The holographic display at the center of the bridge zoomed in on a section of the shimmering wall. The barrier's reactions to incoming attacks played out before them in perfect, predictable sequences. Each response was flawless, each counteraction precisely calculated. "Grandfather would have laughed at this," Sarah murmured, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Captain." Rodriguez looked up from his console, confusion evident on his face. "My grandfather was a maritime historian," she explained, stepping closer to the display. "He specialized in naval warfare during the Age of Sail. He used to take me to the bay and tell me stories about how the greatest admirals in history won their battles not through superior firepower, but through understanding the chaos of the sea itself." Sarah reached out and manipulated the hologram, focusing on a particular sequence where an advanced alien vessel attempted to breach the barrier. "Look at this. Their attacks are perfect, too perfect. They're fighting like machines against machines, each side trying to outcalculate the other." The bridge crew gathered around, watching as their captain highlighted various engagement patterns. Sarah's fingers traced the movements of the attacking forces, her mind overlaying them with memories of her grandfather's old naval charts. "These aliens, they're trying to solve this like a mathematics problem," she continued. "But some of the greatest battles in human history were won by embracing uncertainty, by using the unpredictable forces of nature itself." A new alert chimed through the bridge, an incoming transmission from one of the alien vessels. The message was being broadcast on multiple frequencies in various formats, and their computer systems were slowly decoding it. "They're requesting contact," Lieutenant Maya Patil announced from communications. "The translation matrix is adapting to their language structures. They're calling themselves the Stellar Alliance." Sarah straightened her uniform, years of training kicking in. "Open a channel. Let's introduce ourselves to our new neighbors." "Captain," Rodriguez interjected, "protocol for first contact situations clearly states. Protocol also states that we render assistance when we encounter vessels in distress," Sarah countered. "And from what I'm seeing, these Alliance ships are definitely in need of help, even if they don't realize what kind of help they need yet." As the communication systems established a link, Sarah's mind was already racing with possibilities. The Alliance's sophisticated ships, combined with their timing-perfect tactical computers, should have been unstoppable. Yet they were failing because they had engineered themselves into a corner, removed themselves too far from the beautiful chaos that had shaped humanity's understanding of warfare. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Admiral Vix's four eyes widened slightly at the sight of a human, but before he could speak, Sarah made her decision. "Admiral," she said, standing tall, "I believe we may have a solution to your tactical problem. Sometimes the best way forward is to look backward, all the way back to the seas that first taught us how to fight, survive, and win." And in that moment, as understanding dawned in the alien admiral's eyes, the seeds of victory were planted, though none of them yet knew just how quickly those seeds would bear fruit. The council chamber aboard the Dawn's Light was a marvel of alien architecture. Crystalline pillars rose from floor to ceiling, each one containing a living record of the Alliance's history. 7 elevated platforms arranged in a perfect circle hosted the representatives of the Alliance's member species, while at the center stood a single human woman in an Earth Fleet uniform. Captain Sarah Chen activated her presentation module, and the chamber's ambient lighting dimmed as a holographic representation of Earth's Pacific Ocean materialized above them. The alien leaders watched with varying degrees of interest as waves crashed and swirled in the display. 3 centuries ago, Sarah began, her voice clear and confident, human navies faced a similar challenge to yours. The British Royal Navy, the most powerful fleet of its time, found itself struggling against smaller, more agile forces that refused to engage in traditional line battles. A hologram shifted to show historical footage of sailing ships maneuvering through storms. Our solution wasn't to build bigger ships or more powerful weapons. Instead, we learned to work with the chaos of nature itself. First strategist kill as crystalline form, shimmed with skepticism. Captain Chen, while this historical perspective is fascinating, I fail to see its relevance to our current situation. The Nexari defense grid operates on 11-dimensional quantum principles. Sarah smiled. Exactly. The grid is perfect. Mathematically, theoretically, quantum mechanically perfect. And that's precisely why it can be defeated. She gestured, and the hologram transformed into a real-time display of the Nexari barrier. Your tactical computers are trying to find the perfect solution to break through. But perfection is predictable. Admiral Vix leaned forward, his 4 eyes focusing intently on the display. Explain. The Nexari's defensive algorithms are designed to counter any logical approach, Sarah continued. They analyze attack patterns, calculate all possible variations, and generate perfect countermeasures. But what happens when they encounter something that defies mathematical prediction? She overlaid the movement patterns of 18th-century naval formations onto the current battle space. The similarity between the flow of ocean currents and the quantum eddies around the Nexari barrier became suddenly, strikingly apparent. The Zephyrian representative, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental field, pulsed with interest. You propose we deliberately introduce chaos into our attack strategies. Not chaos, Sarah corrected. Controlled unpredictability. Like those ancient sailing ships, we'll use the natural flows of space itself, gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, solar winds. The Nexari's predictive algorithms can't calculate what they can't quantify. The chamber erupted in overlapping discussions as the Alliance leaders debated among themselves. Sarah waited patiently, knowing that what she was proposing went against millennia of their tactical doctrine. Admiral Vix raised an appendage for silence. The concept has merit, but our ship's neural interfaces and tactical computers aren't designed to execute such imprecise maneuvers. Then let us lead the attack, Sarah proposed. Earth's ships still use manual control systems. Our crews are trained to feel the flow of space, to react instinctively to changing conditions. We can show your forces how to blend advanced technology with intuitive response. The Lumini representative's crystalline surface rippled with amusement. You wish to combat the most sophisticated defense system ever created using what amounts to instinct. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution is the simplest one, Sarah responded. She modified the display one final time, showing a simulation of her proposed attack pattern. The holographic ships moved in flowing, organic patterns that seemed random at first glance, but contained subtle, almost musical rhythms. In 5 hours, she declared with quiet confidence, we can break through that barrier. Not with brute force or superior technology, but by remembering something your civilizations may have forgotten. That space, like our ancient oceans, has currents and flows of its own. We just need to learn to dance with them again. The chamber fell silent as the Alliance leadership studied the simulation. After what felt like an eternity, Admiral Vix rose to his full height. Captain Chen, he announced, you have 5 hours to prove your theory. Prepare your ships and crews. The Alliance fleet will follow your lead." As Sarah left the chamber, she could feel the weight of history settling onto her shoulders. She had promised them victory in 5 hours. Now she had to deliver it. The maintenance bay of the Dawn's Light buzzed with activity as Alliance engineering teams swarmed around the Earth vessels. The sleek lines of human ships stood in stark contrast to the organic curves of alien technology being grafted onto their hulls. Captain Chen watched from a hovering observation platform as her plan took shape below. "The quantum resonance cannons are integrating well with your power systems," Kayla reported, her crystalline form refracting the base lights. "Though I must admit, we've had to modify our standard protocols significantly to account for your manual control interfaces." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the Curiosity's child as it underwent its transformation. "How are the crews adapting to the new systems?" "Better than expected," Lieutenant Rodriguez answered from behind them. He had been coordinating with the human crews, helping them understand the basics of their new weapons. "Our pilots are particularly interested in the gravitational manipulation fields. They're comparing them to ocean currents." The observation platform glided over to the Star Dancer, another Earth vessel being fitted with Alliance shield generators. Through the viewport, Sarah could see its pilot, Maria Santos, working alongside alien engineers. Rather than accepting the standard neural interface, she had insisted on routing the shield controls through a modified navigation yoke. "Your people are remarkably adaptable," Keela observed, "though I still don't understand their resistance to fully automated systems." "That's because you've never felt a ship respond to your touch," Maria called up from her position. She patted the hull of her vessel affectionately. "These ships aren't just machines to us. They're extensions of ourselves." Sarah smiled, remembering her grandfather's stories about ancient sailors who could feel the weather changing in their bones. "How long until the modifications are complete?" 42 minutes remaining, Kella replied. "Though I must note that the Nexari defense grid has already detected our activities. They're analyzing the energy signatures of the modified Earth vessels." The main bay doors opened to admit Admiral Vix, who approached their platform with measured steps. "Captain Chen, the Alliance fleet is assuming their support positions. Are you certain your crews can handle our advanced weaponry with such minimal training?" "Admiral," Sarah responded, "every human pilot in this fleet has spent years learning to read the subtle cues of spaceflight. The principles haven't changed. We're just working with new tools." She gestured to where the Curiosity's child was receiving its final weapon mounts. "Your technology is incredible, but it's still bound by the same fundamental forces we've always worked with." A warning klaxon sounded as one of the quantum resonance cannons powered up unexpectedly. Before the Alliance safety systems could react, Maria had already rerouted power through her manual controls, stabilizing the feedback loop. "Impressive," Vix admitted. "Though such reflexes won't matter if the Nexari barrier simply vaporizes your ships." "That's why we're not going to fight the barrier," Sarah explained. "We're going to flow through it, like water finding cracks in a dam." She brought up a tactical display showing their planned approach vectors. "Your fleet's role will be to amplify the natural quantum fluctuations we create. When the moment comes, you'll know where to strike." The final minutes of preparation passed quickly. One by one, the Earth ships reported ready status, their crews familiarizing themselves with their new capabilities while steadfastly maintaining their manual control systems. The Alliance engineers had done their best to understand this human insistence on feeling their way through space, even as their own tactical computers calculated the mission's probability of success at less than 3%. Sarah returned to her ship, running her hand along the familiar contours of her command chair. The new displays showed readings she was still learning to interpret, but the essence of her ship remained unchanged. They had 1 hour until the attack began. "All Earth vessels, sound off," she commanded, her voice carrying across the fleet-wide channel. One by one, her fellow captains reported ready status, their voices calm and determined. "Remember," she addressed them all, "we're not trying to overpower the barrier. We're going to remind the galaxy that space isn't just mathematics and energy. It's a force of nature, and no one understands natural forces better than those who began their journey on the seas of Earth. The countdown to their attack began, and with it, the most audacious gambit in human spacefaring history. The void between the Alliance fleet and the Nexari barrier shimmered with quantum distortions as the Earth vessels moved into position. Captain Chen watched the tactical display, where 12 green dots representing human ships arranged themselves in what appeared to be a simple arrow formation. To the Nexari observers, it must have looked almost primitive. All ships reporting ready, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from his station. Alliance support fleet standing by at designated coordinates. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the subtle vibrations of her ship through the soles of her boots. The Curiosity's child hummed with new power, its hull reinforced with alien alloys, but its heart remained distinctly human. Nexari Defense Grid is actively scanning our formation. Killa reported from her temporary station on the bridge. Their predictive algorithms are analyzing our capabilities. They seem confused by our approach. Good, Sarah smiled. That's exactly what we want. Begin Phase 1. The Earth fleet started moving forward at what seemed like a leisurely pace. The Star Dancer, piloted by Maria Santos, led the formation with a slight wobble in its trajectory, a deliberate imperfection that would drive the Nexari's precise calculations mad. They're adjusting their barrier frequencies, Killa observed, her crystalline form flickering with interest. The pattern suggests they're preparing for a standard penetration attempt. Through the main viewport, Sarah watched as the quantum defense grid rippled with energy. The Nexari were reinforcing their defenses based on their analysis of Alliance technology signatures, preparing for the kind of sophisticated assault they'd faced countless times before. All ships, initiate drift patterns, Sarah commanded. Remember your training. Feel the gravitational eddies. Use them like ocean currents. The Earth fleet's formation began to shift, each ship making minute adjustments that seemed random but followed the natural flows of space itself. The Star Dancer rolled slightly to port, riding a quantum wave like a surfboard on Earth's seas. Other vessels mimicked the motion, creating a dance of seemingly uncoordinated movements. Nexari defensive algorithms are increasing their calculation cycles, Killa reported, a note of amazement in her artificial voice. They're attempting to predict our attack vector, but our movement patterns aren't matching any known tactical approaches. Sarah nodded, watching as her fleet drew closer to the barrier. The Nexari's perfect defense was designed to counter perfect attacks. It had never faced human imperfection before. Alliance fleet, maintain your position. Admiral Vix's voice came through the command channel. Continue monitoring the quantum fluctuations created by the Earth vessels. The space around the human ships began to shimmer as their irregular movements created ripples in the quantum field. Each distortion was minor, barely noticeable on its own, but together they formed a complex pattern that the Nexari's predictive systems struggled to analyze. We're detecting energy spikes in the barrier, Rodriguez reported. They're cycling through defensive configurations, trying to find one that matches our approach. Hold steady, Sarah commanded her fleet. Let them waste energy trying to solve an equation that doesn't exist. Maria, begin your run. The Star Dancer suddenly broke formation, executing a spiraling maneuver that seemed to defy both logic and physics. The ship spun through space, its movements guided by Maria's intuitive understanding of spatial dynamics rather than computer calculations. Remarkable, Killa whispered. The Nexari barrier is creating multiple overlapping fields, attempting to predict where the ship will go. But they're spreading their energy too thin trying to account for all possibilities. Sarah watched as tiny fractures began to appear in the quantum field, not from the force of their attacks, but from the Nexari's own defense systems overcompensating for the unpredictable human movements. All ships, prepare for Phase 2, she ordered, her voice calm despite the tension on the bridge. Remember, we're not fighting against the barrier. We're dancing with it. Let them exhaust themselves trying to predict the unpredictable. As her fleet continued their elaborate space ballet, Sarah could almost hear her grandfather's voice. The sea cannot be conquered by force, only understood through experience. Today, that ancient wisdom would help humanity change the course of an interstellar war. The space around the Nexari barrier had transformed into a mesmerizing display of light and motion. Earth vessels wove intricate patterns through the quantum distortions, each ship moving with the graceful unpredictability of leaves caught in an autumn breeze. Captain Chen watched as the Star Dancer led another complex sequence, its hull gleaming with the reflected energy of 1,000 defensive reactions. Multiple stress points developing in the barrier matrix, Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across his console. The Nexari systems are trying to maintain coverage across all potential vectors simultaneously. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display where Maria's ship was executing a series of spiraling maneuvers that seemed to defy conventional spaceflight physics. Status of the quantum wake patterns. Forming exactly as you predicted, Kayla responded, her crystalline form pulsing with excitement. The irregular movements are creating cascading distortions in the barrier's energy field. The Nexari computers are detecting them as potential attack paths and attempting to reinforce all of them at once. Through the main viewport, Sarah could see the Alliance fleet holding position at strategic points around the engagement zone. Their advanced sensors were amplifying the quantum disturbances created by the human ships, turning each random movement into 1,000 possible threats for the Nexari defense grid to process. Begin the Trafalgar sequence, Sarah commanded, allowing herself a small smile. Her grandfather would have appreciated the historical reference. The Earth fleet smoothly transitioned into a new formation, but this time each ship moved according to patterns based on ancient naval warfare techniques. The Curiosity's child led one wing while the Star Dancer led another, their paths mirroring the tactics that Admiral Nelson had used to break the Franco-Spanish line 2 centuries ago. Nexari defensive algorithms are showing signs of straying, Kayla announced. They've dedicated 60% of their processing power to predicting our next movements, but their accuracy rate has dropped below 40%. Sarah watched as the barrier flickered and rippled, its perfect geometric patterns beginning to show subtle distortions. The Nexari computers, designed to counter logical attacks, were being overwhelmed by the beautiful chaos of human intuition. All ships, execute Protocol Tide, she ordered. Remember what we practiced. Feel the flow of space like sailors reading the waves. The Earth fleet split into 3 groups, each one moving in patterns inspired by ocean currents. The Star Dancer led its group in a sweeping arc that mimicked the Gulf Stream, while other vessels followed paths based on the Kuroshio and Agulhas currents. Remarkable, Admiral Vix's voice came through the command channel. The barrier's energy distribution is becoming increasingly erratic. Your ships are creating patterns within patterns, forcing their systems to multiply their calculations exponentially. Sarah smiled as she watched the Nexari defense grid struggle to adapt. Where advanced alien warships had failed with brute force, human vessels were succeeding with grace and intuition. Each unpredictable movement forced the barrier's controllers to recalculate countless possible outcomes, spreading their perfect defense increasingly thin. Energy surge detected, Rodriguez called out. The barrier is attempting to establish a new configuration. Hold your courses, Sarah commanded her fleet. Let them react to us. Every adjustment they make creates new quantum eddies we can use. The space around them blazed with light as the Nexari barrier shifted and pulsed, trying to establish a stable defense pattern against the seemingly random human attacks. But there was nothing random about their movements. Each ship followed the natural flows of space itself, turning the barrier's own energy against it. 3rd hour complete, Kayla reported. Entering the 4th hour of the operation, barrier stability has decreased by 37%. Sarah watched as another series of fractures appeared in the quantum field, spreading like cracks in ice. The Nexari's perfect defense was being undone, not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by humanity's ability to embrace and use the natural chaos of the universe itself. Begin final positioning for Phase 3, she ordered, knowing that the next hour would determine the fate of not just their mission, but possibly the entire war. Let's show them what happens when you try to impose perfect order on an imperfect universe. The final hour of battle approached as streams of quantum energy flickered across space like lightning in an ancient storm. Captain Chen stood at her command station, watching as the cumulative effect of 4 hours of calculated chaos began to show in the once perfect Nexari defense grid. The barrier now rippled with unstable energy, its surface marked by spreading patterns of disruption. Multiple fracture points confirmed, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with concentration. The Nexari systems are running at 140% of their designed capacity, trying to maintain barrier cohesion. Sarah nodded, her eyes tracking the Star Dancer as Maria executed another series of precisely imperfect maneuvers. Status of the quantum wake patterns. The distortions have reached critical mass, Killa responded, her crystalline form shimmering with barely contained excitement. The barrier's predictive algorithms are caught in recursive loops trying to anticipate our movements. They're generating defense patterns for scenarios that haven't even occurred. Through the main viewport, Sarah could see the Alliance fleet moving into their final positions. Admiral Vix had positioned his ships at carefully calculated points where the human vessel's chaotic movements had created the most significant disruptions in the Nexari's defensive field. All Earth vessels, prepare for the Fibonacci spiral, Sarah commanded, her voice calm despite the historic moment approaching. Remember your training. This is just like sailing through a hurricane's eye wall. The human fleet began to move in a new pattern, each ship following a course based on nature's own perfect ratio. The Curiosity's child led the formation, its path tracing the same spiral pattern found in Nautilus shells and galaxy arms. Other vessels followed at precisely calculated intervals, their movements creating a cascading series of quantum disturbances that resonated with the natural frequencies of space itself. Nexari systems are exhibiting signs of cognitive overload, Killa announced. Their barrier control algorithms are attempting to predict and counter our spiral pattern, but the calculations are expanding exponentially. Sarah watched as the defense grid's energy patterns began to fluctuate wildly. The Nexari computers, designed to maintain perfect order, were being overwhelmed by a pattern that was simultaneously mathematical and chaotic. Alliance fleet, stand ready, Admiral Vix's voice carried across the command channel. The moment their grid destabilizes, target the fracture points with full quantum resonance. The space around them blazed with energy as the Nexari barrier attempted one final reconfiguration. Streams of quantum particles danced between the ships like auroras, creating a spectacle that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. Now, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of maritime tradition. Execute final approach. Show them what Earth's children can do. The human fleet suddenly broke their spiral pattern, each ship moving in a unique trajectory that appeared random but followed the complex mathematics of fluid dynamics. The Star Dancer rolled through a quantum eddy like a surfboard riding a wave, while other vessels carved paths through space that mirrored the behavior of ocean currents. Barrier integrity failing. Rodriguez called out, multiple cascade failures detected in their defense matrix. The Nexari grid, pushed beyond its limits by hours of trying to predict the unpredictable, began to collapse. Sections of the once impenetrable barrier flickered and vanished, unable to maintain coherence against the organized chaos of human tactics. Alliance fleet, engage, Admiral Vix ordered. The advanced alien warships opened fire with their quantum resonance cannons, their energy beams striking precisely where the human vessel's movements had created the greatest instabilities. Sarah watched as sections of the barrier shattered like breaking glass, the Nexari's perfect defense undone by the beautiful imperfection of human intuition. Through the growing gaps in the quantum field, she could see the Helios 9 system beyond, its worlds now within reach of the Alliance fleet. Time elapsed since battle commencement. Kella reported with a note of awe in her artificial voice. 4 hours and 57 minutes. Captain Chen allowed herself a small smile as she watched the last sections of the barrier collapse. "Send word to Alliance Command," she ordered. "Tell them that sometimes the best way to counter perfect logic is with perfect instinct." 3 days after the battle, Captain Sarah Chen stood in a conference room aboard the Dawn's Light, facing an unexpected audience. The Nexari delegation had arrived not with threats or demands, but with questions. Their tall, crystalline forms towered over her, their faceted surfaces reflecting the soft ambient light as they studied the human who had changed the course of the war. "We have reviewed the battle recordings 47,000 times," the Nexari Prime Analyst stated, its voice resonating like wind through crystal. "Our system still cannot derive a predictable pattern from your movements. This defies all known principles of tactical engagement." Sarah gestured to the holographic display between them, where recordings of Earth's ancient sailing ships played alongside footage of the recent space battle. "That's because we weren't trying to create a pattern for you to predict. We were working with the natural flows of space itself." Admiral Vix and First Strategist Kella stood nearby, watching as Sarah demonstrated the parallels between ocean navigation and the movements that had broken the quantum defense grid. The Nexari observers leaned forward, their crystalline bodies vibrating with interest. "Your ships possessed inferior technology," another Nexari analyst noted. "Your weapons were less advanced, your sensors more limited. By all logical calculations, you should have failed." "Logic isn't everything," Sarah replied, thinking of her grandfather's lessons. "The universe itself isn't perfectly logical. It's a blend of order and chaos, of patterns and randomness. Sometimes the best way to understand it is to stop trying to control it and learn to move with it instead." The hologram shifted to show the Star Dancer executing its final maneuvers. Maria Santos had piloted her ship like an ancient sailing vessel riding the trade winds, using the quantum distortions as naturally as her predecessors had used ocean currents. "Your defense grid was perfect," Sarah continued. "That was its weakness. It was designed to counter perfect attacks, to predict logical strategies. But humans have learned over centuries that perfection isn't always the answer. Sometimes you need to embrace imperfection to achieve the impossible." The Nexari Prime Analyst's surface rippled with what might have been appreciation. "We would request human advisors to help us understand this concept further. Our civilization has pursued perfection for millennia. Perhaps there are other paths we should explore." Admiral Vix stepped forward. "The Alliance Council has already approved a joint training program. We believe there is much we can learn from each other." Sarah watched as Alliance and Nexari representatives began discussing the details of cooperation. The war that had seemed unwinnable just days ago was transforming into an opportunity for unprecedented collaboration. Captain Chen, Killa approached, her crystalline form glowing softly. "The Alliance has received requests from 17 different species for human tactical advisors. Your demonstration has sparked a revolution in military thinking across known space." Sarah smiled, remembering the model ships that had once filled her grandfather's study. "We're not better than anyone else," she said. "We've just had different teachers. The oceans of Earth taught us lessons that space-borne civilizations never had the chance to learn." As if to emphasize her point, the hologram showed a final image, a tall sailing ship cresting a wave beside the Curiosity's child, riding a quantum distortion. The patterns of movement, separated by centuries and light years, were almost identical. "The Council has approved the establishment of a new tactical training center," Admiral Vix announced. "We're calling it the Terran School of Spatial Dynamics. Captain Chen, we'd like you to oversee its development." Sarah thought of all the lessons waiting to be shared, not just about warfare, but about understanding the fundamental nature of space itself. Humanity's journey from Earth's oceans to the stars had given them a unique perspective, one that could now help shape the future of interstellar civilization. "I accept," she said, "on one condition. The first lesson for every student, regardless of species, will be about the seas that taught humanity to dance with chaos. Because sometimes the best way forward is to look back and remember where you came from. As the delegates dispersed to begin their work, Sarah touched the old compass her grandfather had given her, now mounted on her uniform. In just 5 hours, humanity had changed the course of an interstellar war. But their greater contribution might be teaching the galaxy that true wisdom lies not in imposing order on the universe, but in learning to flow with its natural rhythms.